A rich mother decides to take her son's fate into her own hands. Pretending to be a cleaner in his company, she was looking for a worthy wife for the billionaire. But what happened next shocked everyone. Subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching us from. Viola Carter was a woman of quiet strength and deep determination. Widowed at a young age, she had raised her son, Jaden, to be the man he was today, a billionaire entrepreneur and the owner of one of the most influential companies in the country. Jaden was the embodiment of success, his sharp mind and relentless drive propelling him to heights few could reach. Yet, despite his achievements, Viola saw the void in his life. Her son was alone, consumed by work, and surrounded by people who only seemed to care about his wealth and power. For months, Viola had been wrestling with her concerns. The whispers about her son's company, claims of toxic culture, racism, and a lack of inclusivity gnawed at her. She couldn't ignore the unease in her heart, the feeling that something had gone terribly wrong in the empire her son had built. And so, she decided to take matters into her own hands. Viola's plan was bold, perhaps even reckless, but it was the only way she could uncover the truth. She would go undercover as a cleaner in Jaden's company, seeing firsthand how the employees behaved when no one was watching. It wasn't just about the company's culture. Viola also hoped to find someone who could truly care for her son, a woman who would love him for who he was, not his fortune. On a chilly Monday morning, dressed in plain, second-hand clothes and armed with a fake resume, Viola walked into the headquarters of Carter Enterprises. The gleaming glass building towered over the city, a testament to her son's vision. As she stepped inside, the polished marble floors and high-tech design seemed almost to mock her modest attire. She had no doubt she would stand out in this world of tailored suits and expensive accessories. The head of the cleaning staff, a stern man named Gregory, barely glanced at her as he handed over her uniform. His tone was curt, his instructions brief. Viola didn't mind. She wasn't here to make friends. Slipping into the plain gray uniform and tying her hair back, she began her first day as Viola Andrews, the newest cleaner at Carter Enterprises. It didn't take long for the challenges to appear. As Viola moved through the pristine hallways with her cart, she overheard snippets of conversations that revealed the true nature of the workplace. Comments about her age and appearance were whispered, but loud enough for her to hear. Some employees laughed when she struggled to move heavy cleaning equipment, their amusement cutting through her like a knife. "Looks like they're hiring anyone off the streets these days," one woman sneered as Viola passed by. Viola kept her head down, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. She reminded herself why she was here, to observe, to learn, and eventually to act. But the more she saw, the harder it became to keep her composure. One of the most vocal critics was a woman named Lucy, a senior employee in the marketing department. Lucy was everything Viola had expected from someone blinded by privilege. Smug, arrogant, and completely oblivious to the struggles of those around her. She made no effort to hide her disdain for Viola, often going out of her way to make snide remarks or create extra messes for her to clean. Yet, amid the hostility, there were glimmers of humanity. During her third day on the job, Viola met Ivy, a kind-hearted woman who worked in HR. Ivy was the first person to greet her with warmth, offering a smile that seemed genuine. "Hi there," Ivy said, pausing in the break room as Viola wiped down the counters. "You must be new here. I'm Ivy." Viola straightened up, surprised by the friendly tone. "Yes, I just started. Viola Andrews." "It's nice to meet you, Viola. Let me know if you need anything, okay?" Ivy's sincerity was refreshing, a stark contrast to the coldness she'd encountered elsewhere. Over the next few days, Viola found herself gravitating toward Ivy. The young woman often stopped by to chat, offering small acts of kindness that made Viola's days a little brighter. It didn't take long for Viola to learn Ivy's story, a tale of resilience and sacrifice. Ivy had grown up in a working-class family, juggling multiple jobs to support her younger sister's education. Despite her talent and dedication, she was often overlooked in the workplace, dismissed as too ordinary for advancement. Viola couldn't help but admire Ivy's strength. There was a quiet determination in the way she carried herself, a refusal to let the world's cruelty define her. But she also saw the toll it took. Ivy's eyes, though warm, carried a shadow of exhaustion, a reminder of the battles she fought every day. As Viola settled into her role, she began to notice a troubling pattern. While employees like Lucy openly mocked her, their behavior changed dramatically in the presence of her son. Whenever Jaden visited the office, the same people who sneered at her transformed into sycophants, tripping over themselves to gain his approval. They showered him with compliments, laughed at his jokes, and feigned interest in his vision for the company. Viola watched these performances with a mixture of amusement and disdain. It was clear they saw Jaden not as a leader, but as a stepping stone to their own ambitions. Viola kept her observations to herself, but she was already forming a plan. The duplicity she witnessed couldn't go unchallenged, and neither could the toxic culture that allowed it to flourish. Yet, as she continued her undercover mission, her focus began to shift. It wasn't just about exposing the wrongdoers, it was about finding a way to heal the company from within. And then there was Ivy. Viola saw something special in her, a blend of courage, compassion, and intelligence that set her apart from the rest. Could she be the one? Viola didn't dare to hope, but the thought lingered in her mind. By the end of her first week, Viola had gathered enough evidence to confirm her suspicions. The company her son had built was deeply flawed, its foundations weakened by prejudice and greed. But she also knew that change was possible. She had seen it in Ivy, in the few moments of kindness that managed to pierce through the darkness. As she prepared to face the challenges ahead, Viola felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no stranger to adversity, and she wasn't about to let these people destroy what her son had worked so hard to create. With a determined heart and a clear mission, Viola resolved to stay the course, no matter how difficult the road might be. She was just getting started. The office buzzed with its usual activity, the hum of conversations mixing with the clatter of keyboards and the occasional ring of phones. Viola moved through the hallways with her cleaning cart, her gray uniform blending into the background. Most employees didn't bother acknowledging her presence. To them, she was invisible, a fixture of the building rather than a person. But Viola observed everything. Her sharp eyes caught every sneer, every whispered insult, every act of thoughtless cruelty. Lucy, as expected, continued to make her life difficult. Whenever she passed by, the smug marketing executive would find a way to demean her. "Missed a spot," Lucy said one morning, pointing at a speck of dust on the floor near her desk. She didn't bother hiding her smirk as she sipped her overpriced latte. "You're not very good at this, are you?" Viola didn't respond. She calmly picked up her mop and cleaned the area, her face betraying none of the frustration she felt. Lucy's laughter, loud and mocking, echoed behind her as she walked away. It was a familiar sound by now, one she had learned to tune out. Viola reminded herself that Lucy was her own worst enemy, someone whose arrogance would eventually be her downfall. Despite the hostility, Viola found solace in her growing friendship with Ivy. The HR specialist had become a beacon of light in an otherwise cold and unkind environment. Ivy's visits to the break room were often the highlight of Viola's day. The young woman had an easy way about her, her warmth cutting through the tension that seemed to hang in the air. One afternoon, Ivy lingered in the break room longer than usual, her face clouded with worry. Viola noticed immediately. "Everything all right, dear?" she asked, setting down the cloth she'd been using to wipe the counters. Ivy hesitated, then sighed. "It's just work. Sometimes it feels like no matter how hard I try, I'm never taken seriously." Viola tilted her head, encouraging her to continue. "I've been here for years," Ivy said, her voice tinged with frustration. "I've put in the hours, taken on extra responsibilities, but whenever there's a promotion, it goes to someone else. Someone louder, someone flashier, people like Lucy." Viola's lips pressed into a thin line. She had seen this pattern play out countless times during her undercover stint. Employees like Ivy, dedicated, hardworking, and unassuming, were often overlooked in favor of those who knew how to play office politics. "You deserve better," Viola said, her tone firm. "Don't let them make you feel less than you are." Ivy smiled faintly. "Thanks, Viola, that means a lot." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lucy, who breezed into the room with her usual air of superiority. She glanced at Ivy, then at Viola, her expression twisting into a sneer. "Look at this, HR and housekeeping having a little heart-to-heart," Lucy said, her voice dripping with condescension. "How quaint." Viola held Ivy's gaze, silently urging her not to engage. Ivy, to her credit, ignored Lucy's taunts and left the room with her head held high. Viola followed a moment later, her hands tightening around the handle of her cleaning cart. She could feel Lucy's eyes on her back, the weight of her disdain palpable. As the days passed, Lucy's behavior escalated. She began leaving messes in her office on purpose, knowing Viola would have to clean them. Coffee spills, shredded papers, even discarded food wrappers, nothing was too petty. Viola endured it all without complaint, her composure unshaken, but one incident pushed Ivy to her limit. During a department-wide meeting, Lucy made a disparaging comment about Ivy's abilities, questioning her competence in front of their colleagues. The remark was unnecessary, cruel, and entirely untrue. "That's enough," Ivy said, her voice steady but firm. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at her. "If you have an issue with my work, Lucy, bring it to me privately. Publicly undermining your colleagues is unprofessional and inappropriate." Lucy's eyes narrowed. "I'm just being honest. If you can't handle constructive criticism, maybe this isn't the right place for you." Ivy didn't waver. "What you're doing isn't constructive. It's bullying, and I won't stand for it." The tension in the room was palpable. Lucy looked around, expecting support from her peers, but none came. Her colleagues avoided her gaze, unwilling to get involved. Ivy, meanwhile, stood tall, her resolve unshaken. Viola, watching from the corner of the room where she had been discreetly cleaning, felt a swell of pride. Later that day, Ivy found Viola in the break room. She looked tired but triumphant. "Thank you," Ivy said, her voice soft. "For what?" Viola asked, genuinely curious. "For being there," Ivy said, "just knowing someone has my back. It helps more than you know." Viola smiled, her heart warming at the words. She hadn't done much, but it was clear that her presence had made a difference. And in that moment, she realized just how much she had come to care about Ivy. This young woman, so full of strength and integrity, reminded Viola of herself in her younger years. She couldn't help but hope that Ivy might be the one who could bring real happiness to her son's life. But before Viola could act on that hope, a new challenge arose. One morning, she arrived at work to find Ivy in tears. Someone had tampered with an important set of documents she had been working on, resulting in a mistake that jeopardized a major deal for the company. Ivy was being blamed, and Lucy was leading the charge. "They're saying it's my fault," Ivy said, her voice trembling. "But I know I didn't mess up. Someone must have done this on purpose." Viola's jaw tightened. She didn't need to ask who was behind it. Lucy's fingerprints were all over this scheme. "Don't worry, dear," Viola said, her tone calm but resolute. "We'll get to the bottom of this." And with that, Viola began to lay the groundwork for her next move. She wasn't just going to defend Ivy. She was going to expose Lucy and everyone else who contributed to the toxic culture at Carter Enterprises. It was time for the truth to come to light. The atmosphere at Carter Enterprises was tense. News of Ivy's supposed mistake had spread like wildfire, and the gossip mill was working overtime. Employees whispered in corners, speculating about what had happened and whether Ivy would lose her job. Lucy, predictably, was at the center of it all, her smirk wider than ever as she recounted the details to anyone who would listen. "I warned everyone," Lucy said, leaning against the break room counter as a group of employees gathered around her. "She's always been mediocre at best. It was only a matter of time before she messed up something important." Viola, listening from the doorway, clenched her fists. She had spent weeks observing Lucy's behavior, and this was the final straw. Ivy didn't deserve to be humiliated like this, especially not for something she didn't do. Viola decided it was time to put her plan into action. That evening, after most of the office had cleared out, Viola approached Ivy at her desk. The young woman looked exhausted, her eyes red from tears she had tried to hide. "Ivy," Viola said gently, pulling up a chair beside her. "We need to talk." Ivy looked up, her expression wary but curious. "What is it?" Viola hesitated for a moment, then decided there was no point in hiding the truth any longer. "I'm not just a cleaner," she said quietly. "I'm Viola Carter, Jaden's mother." Ivy blinked, stunned into silence. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "I know this is a lot to take in," Viola continued, "but I need you to trust me. I've been working here undercover to understand the real culture of this company and to find someone who can make a difference." Ivy stared at her, trying to process what she had just heard. "You're his mother?" she finally managed to say. Viola nodded. "And I think you're the person who can help me fix what's wrong here." For a moment, Ivy looked like she might argue, but then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I don't know what you think I can do, Viola. Lucy's already got everyone convinced I'm incompetent. She's made sure of that." "She's overplayed her hand," Viola said firmly. "I have evidence, enough to expose her and everyone else who's been contributing to this toxic culture. But I need your help to present it." Ivy hesitated, then nodded. "What do you need me to do?" The next morning, Viola set her plan into motion. She met with Jaden in his office, presenting him with a detailed report of everything she had uncovered during her time undercover. The report included recordings of discriminatory comments, proof of Lucy's attempts to sabotage colleagues, and testimonials from employees who had suffered in silence. Jaden's face darkened as he flipped through the evidence. "I can't believe this has been happening right under my nose," he said, his voice tight with anger. "It's not your fault." Viola said gently. "But now that you know, it's your responsibility to fix it." Jaden nodded, his jaw set with determination. "We're going to handle this the right way." That afternoon, Jaden called an emergency meeting with the entire staff. The employees filed into the conference room, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Lucy sauntered in with her usual confidence, taking a seat near the front. Ivy, seated at the back with Viola, avoided Lucy's gaze. Jaden stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding the room. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice calm but firm. "I've recently been made aware of some serious issues within this company, issues that go against everything Carter Enterprises stands for." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Jaden held up Viola's report. "This document contains evidence of workplace bullying, discrimination, and unethical behavior. I've reviewed it personally, and I'm deeply disappointed by what I've found." Murmurs spread through the room as employees exchanged uneasy glances. Lucy shifted in her seat, her confident demeanor faltering. Jaden continued, his gaze sweeping across the room. "To those of you who have upheld our values and treated your colleagues with respect, I thank you. But for those who have participated in or enabled this toxic culture, there will be consequences." He turned his attention to Lucy, his eyes narrowing. "Lucy, you've been at the center of many of these issues. The evidence against you is overwhelming. Effective immediately, you're terminated from your position." Lucy's face turned red and she shot to her feet. "This is ridiculous," she exclaimed. "You can't fire me over baseless accusations." Jaden remained unflinching. "The accusations are far from baseless. And your behavior during this meeting only confirms what we already know. Security will escort you out." As Lucy was led out of the room, the tension in the air seemed to dissipate. Jaden addressed the remaining employees. "Let this be a wake-up call. Carter Enterprises will no longer tolerate bullying, discrimination, or unethical behavior. We're implementing new policies to ensure this company becomes a place where everyone is treated with dignity and respect." He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at Ivy. "And to those who have endured injustice, I want you to know that we see you, we value you, and we're committed to making things right." Ivy felt a lump rise in her throat as the room erupted in applause. For the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope. After the meeting, Jaden pulled Ivy aside. "I want to thank you," he said, his voice sincere, "for standing up for what's right, even when it wasn't easy." Ivy shook her head. "I didn't do much. It was your mother who made all of this possible." Jaden smiled. "She has a knack for that, but don't sell yourself short. You're exactly the kind of person we need in this company." He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to work with you more closely going forward, if you're open to it." Ivy nodded, her heart racing. "I'd like that." As she walked back to her desk, Ivy couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged. And for Viola, watching from the sidelines, it was clear. This was only the beginning of the changes she and her son were going to bring to Carter Enterprises. The ripple effects of the meeting were immediate. Carter Enterprises was buzzing with the aftermath of Lucy's dismissal, and employees approached their work with a newfound sense of caution. For some, the changes were a relief, a sign that the toxic environment was being dismantled. For others, it was a wake-up call that their behavior would no longer be tolerated. Jaden wasted no time implementing the policies his mother had suggested. A third-party consulting firm was brought in to conduct inclusivity training, and an anonymous reporting system was established for employees to flag unethical behavior. Viola, though she had returned to her role as a behind-the-scenes advisor, remained a pivotal figure in these changes. Her undercover experience had given her insights that no corporate manual could provide. But while the company's culture began to shift, another transformation was taking place, one much closer to home. Jaden had always been good at maintaining professional boundaries. He prided himself on his ability to separate his work life from his personal life, knowing that blending the two could lead to complications. But with Ivy, things felt different. She wasn't just another employee. She was someone who had proven her integrity in the face of immense pressure. Her kindness and strength had left an impression on him, one he couldn't ignore. Their interactions became more frequent, though Jaden always kept them professional. He would stop by her desk to check on her progress or invite her to strategy meetings where her insights were invaluable. Ivy, for her part, was cautious. She respected Jaden as a leader, but couldn't shake the nerves that came with being in his orbit. After all, he was not just her boss, he was one of the most powerful men in the country. It was Viola who gave Jaden the nudge he needed to take a chance. "You're fond of her," Viola said one evening as they sat in his penthouse, reviewing the latest reports from the consulting firm. Jaden looked up from his laptop, startled. "Who?" "Don't play coy with me, Jaden," Viola said with a knowing smile. "I've seen the way you look at Ivy." Jaden sighed, leaning back in his chair. "She's incredible, Mom, but I don't want her to think I'm taking advantage of my position." Viola set her papers aside and fixed him with a steady gaze. "If you approach her with honesty and respect, she'll see your intentions for what they are. You deserve to be happy, Jaden. And so does she." Jaden nodded slowly, her words sinking in. He had always trusted his mother's judgment, and if she believed in this, maybe he could too. A week later, Jaden invited Ivy to lunch. It was framed as a casual meeting to discuss some ideas she had for improving employee morale, but Jaden had a different agenda. They met at a quiet cafe near the office, where the hustle of the city faded into the background. "Ivy," Jaden began after they had placed their orders, "I want to thank you again for everything you've done these past few weeks. Your resilience and dedication have been an inspiration, not just to me, but to the entire company." Ivy blushed, caught off guard by the compliment. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. That means a lot." "Jaden," he corrected with a small smile. "If we're going to have this conversation, let's drop the formalities." Ivy laughed nervously. "Okay, Jaden. What conversation?" Jaden hesitated, then decided to take the leap. "I admire you, Ivy, not just as a professional, but as a person. You've shown incredible strength and compassion, even when things were stacked against you. I'd like to get to know you better, outside of work, if you're open to that." Ivy stared at him, her heart pounding. For a moment, she couldn't believe what she was hearing. The billionaire CEO of Carter Enterprises wanted to spend time with her? It felt surreal. I'd like that," she said finally, a smile spreading across her face. Jaden's own smile widened. "Good. Let's start with dinner this weekend." Their first dinner was simple but meaningful. Jaden took Ivy to a cozy, family-owned restaurant, far removed from the glitz and glamour people might associate with his lifestyle. Over plates of homemade pasta, they talked about everything from their childhoods to their hopes for the future. Jaden was struck by Ivy's humility and her unwavering commitment to her family. Ivy, in turn, was surprised by Jaden's openness and his willingness to listen. As their relationship deepened, it became clear to both of them that this was something special. Jaden admired Ivy's grounded perspective, which kept him centered even amid the chaos of running a corporation. Ivy found comfort in Jaden's steady presence, his confidence tempered by a genuine care for those around him. Meanwhile, the changes at Carter Enterprises continued to unfold. Employees began noticing the difference almost immediately. Meetings were more collaborative. Promotions were awarded based on merit rather than favoritism, and the overall atmosphere became one of inclusion and respect. One of the most significant moments came when Ivy, now promoted to a leadership role in HR, unveiled a mentorship program aimed at supporting underrepresented employees. The initiative was met with overwhelming support, and Ivy quickly became a beloved figure within the company. "She's really something, isn't she?" Viola remarked to Jaden one evening as they reviewed the program's success. "She is," Jaden said, his voice full of pride, "and I'm lucky to have her." As the months passed, Jaden and Ivy's relationship grew stronger. They were careful to keep their romance discreet, not wanting to draw unnecessary attention. But their connection was undeniable, and those closest to them, Viola especially, could see how happy they made each other. It wasn't long before Jaden decided to take the next step. He planned a special evening at Viola's favorite restaurant, inviting Ivy under the guise of celebrating the company's recent milestones. When the dessert arrived, a small velvet box was placed on the plate in front of Ivy. Her eyes widened as she looked at Jaden, who had already risen from his seat. Dropping to one knee, he opened the box to reveal a delicate diamond ring. "Ivy," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You've changed my life in ways I never imagined. You've shown me what it means to be truly happy, and I can't imagine spending my life with anyone else. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Ivy's face as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. 1,000 times yes." The room erupted in applause as Jaden slipped the ring onto her finger. Viola, seated nearby, couldn't hide her tears of joy. Her plan had worked better than she ever could have hoped. In the weeks that followed, news of their engagement spread throughout the company. Employees were thrilled, seeing their CEO's love story as a testament to the values of integrity and kindness that now defined Carter Enterprises. Ivy, once dismissed as ordinary by people like Lucy, was now celebrated as a symbol of the company's transformation. As Jaden and Ivy prepared for their future together, Viola reflected on everything that had led to this moment. Her journey undercover, the challenges she had faced, and the relationships she had built had all been worth it. Carter Enterprises was no longer just a company. It was a family, a reflection of the love and perseverance that had brought them to where they were. And for Viola, there was no greater reward than seeing her son happy, his life enriched by the woman who had captured his heart. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this and explore our channel for more exciting content. If you enjoyed this video, share it with your friends and family so they can join the journey too. See you in the next one.